faithfully delivering value by interpreting great books from around the world. Hello, this is Sally with Book Insights. Today, we're interpreting for you the book Istanbul Memories and the City. This is a significant work by Orhan Pamuk, the Turkish author who won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 2006. If Pamuk's masterpiece, My Name is Red, established his status on the international literary stage, then the book we're exploring today, Istanbul, Memories and the City, ultimately enabled him to win the Nobel Prize crown. Orhan Pamuk was born in Istanbul in 1952. His family accumulated great wealth, but by his father's time, they fell into decline. This shift deeply made Pamuk feel the vicissitudes of life, enhancing his sensitivity to his surroundings, especially the city he lived in. Apart from brief overseas trips for lectures, Pamuk resided mostly in Istanbul. He holds deep affection for this city, which mirrors the intersection of Eastern and Western cultures and the clash between tradition and modern civilization, embodying an intrinsic spiritual essence. This spiritual essence permeates deep into the souls of its inhabitants. For Pamuk, his personal growth story is a micro-history of Istanbul. Conversely, the city's history constantly unveils his personal development. Moreover, this is a unique book. It serves as both a historical and cultural biography of Istanbul and a memoir of Pamuk's early life. In this book, Pamuk's perspective is dual. First, he approaches Istanbul as a lifelong resident, not as a tourist seeking exotic thrills. Second, he reflects on Istanbul as an intellectual, avoiding the fervor and adulation of local nationalists. As he said in his Nobel Prize lecture, Pamuk's works, in seeking the melancholic soul of his homeland, uncovered new symbols of civilizational clashes and convergences. This melancholy stemming from civilizational clashes is indeed the central theme in all of Pamuk's works. Today we're exploring Istanbul, Memories and the City, a prime example that illustrates this central theme. The latest edition of this book contains over 400 black and white images, including photos of the author and his family, and urban landscapes of Istanbul across various periods. Oh, the book has 37 chapters, about 250,000 words. All right, let's dive into the writer's life in this city and his observations. We usually picture Istanbul with romantic, exotic images, like robes everywhere, women in vibrant headscarves, all sorts of yummy foods and stuff. In the book, it tells the story of French writer Gautier traveling to Istanbul in the mid 1800s. He went on to write a book called Istanbul. To him, the city was like the epitome of Oriental exoticism. Everything he noticed was so different from the West. Like weird outfits, Ramadan night traditions, scenes straight out of Arabian Nights, mysterious ceremonies, and all that. And Pamuk sees this as the classic outsider view of Istanbul, just painting Gautier's fantasy of an Oriental city. That Pamuk's take on the city is different. In his book, he draws from Istanbul's actual history and reality, revealing this unique place that's seen millennia of splendor and the downfall of empires. Istanbul's specialness comes from its one-of-a-kind spot on the map. Oh, it's split by the Bosphorus Strait. East is Asia, west is Europe. So it's the only city on Earth that bridges Europe and Asia. Its prime location has built up its age-old splendor. Founded way back in 660 BC, it was a monarchy that lasted more than a millennium. It was the heart of the Byzantine Empire till 1453, then became the capital of the mighty Ottoman Empire, stretching across Europe and Asia. Pamuk describes how every shift in dynasty added another layer to the city's history. Cultures clash and time periods mix together, creating Istanbul's one-of-a-kind cultural tapestry. Right here, you've got soaring Muslim mosques, huge Catholic and Orthodox churches, wooden homes with Eastern flair, and Greek-inspired buildings. Along the Bosphorus shores, there's tons of fancy modern villas and Folks take little boats out at night to float around and gaze at the moon. But if you head up the back hills and wander into tight lanes, you'll spot mosques with minarets, cathedrals, and other sacred spots. Not far off, in rundown lanes, there are rows of wooden homes for everyday folks. The Western style modern life blends with traditional religious practices and the daily routines of ordinary folks, as if all eras haven't faded away. Tamek's apartment was built on the ruins of an imperial mansion, and his whole big family lived in this five-story building. Relatives' homes usually had an unplayed piano. Each had a locked glass cabinet displaying ancient objects like Chinese porcelain, teacups, silverware, sugar bowls, snuff boxes, etc. Each also had abandoned desks, headscarf racks, Japanese screens, and bookshelves full of dust-covered medical books. Living rooms had framed old photos. People decorated homes like museums, every object steeped in the scent of time, mirroring Istanbul itself. Hammock said the city's cultural atrophy and the lament of a dying civilizations surrounded everyone. When Pamuk grew older and explored the city with his parents, he found it permeated by an air of decay, much like his family building. Little Pamuk walked the streets with his mom. Through a foggy shop window, he saw cyclamen flowers, feeling they were like a red wolf from a fairy tale. Mother and son rode the tram home, connecting modern districts with old neighborhoods. After long tram rides, little Pamuk felt the tram's melancholy sound lingered even in his dreams. He loved the wooden decor in the tram and the electric blue glass door separating driver and passengers as time flowed slowly within. Like the city's history, its changes continued slowly. Old shops gradually closed, yielding to modern businesses. So Pamuk played a guessing game with his brother. One named an old place, like the shop next to the women's night school. The other said what it became. For example, bakeries, flower shops, bag stores, etc. This nostalgic game revealed a sorrow of memory. Over 2 millennia, Istanbul endured repeated turmoil. The palaces of the past now have cracked windows and crumbled walls, the empire destroyed. Especially after the Ottoman Empire's defeat in World War I, Istanbul plunged into chaotic fragmentation, with the lost empire's poverty, turmoil, and decay spreading like a chronic disease. After the Turkish Republic was founded in 1923, Istanbul, as the capital again, underwent full secularization and westernization. It faced this dilemma: how to keep its cultural traditions while responding to Western challenges. People were shrouded in uncertain melancholy, and the city developed a sorrowful character during its decline. Tomuk wrote that the city showed incurable old-fashioned poverty, and this resignation nourished Istanbul's inner soul of huzn. This is a deeply internalized feeling only understood by those who live in Istanbul and feel history's power permeating daily life. Pamuk wrote that in its 2,000-year history, Istanbul had never been so poor, dilapidated, or isolated. To me, it's always been a city of ruins filled with the sadness of an empire's sunset. My whole life, I've either fought this sorrow or made it my own. This sorrow or melancholy is a stubborn emotion. People cling to sad feelings trying to hold on to what's lost. Even as a child, Pamuk instinctively grasped the city's spirit by depicting its landscapes, especially ancient ruins and bitter memories of fallen empires. Hamel gave Istanbul a key spiritual trait, huzun. The word huzun, u meaning breath, meaning sorrow, is Turkish for melancholy. Melancholy seeps into daily life here like breathing, carrying the grief and despair of defeat and poverty. Tomik dedicates much of the book to Istanbul's huzun, even naming a chapter after it. Let me share some details. Creaky wooden stairs in old villas, foggy steamship whistles, winter ferries docked at abandoned ports, once grand marble walls, now stained, relics from imperial times, and dried up fountains say in narrow alleys and small streets. Elderly folks shuffling along, a man selling postcards at the same spot for 40 years, fathers carrying plastic bags home at sunset, kids playing soccer on cobblestones, veiled women waiting silently at remote bus stops, or hooded crows migrating south from the Balkans each fall. Oh, in the dead of winter, sunlight hits the Bosphorus as mist slowly rises from the sea, enveloping everyone around, and so on. These scenes of confusion, murkiness, and invisible futures, every ordinary behavior is soaked in melancholy, conveying Turk's deep loss, like fogged winter windows blocking reality. Between people and the world, it creates a comforting backdrop. But Huzin isn't just negative. For Istanbulites, it's a bridge to cultural belonging. The city's countless ruins mirror their fate, showing people's acceptance of historical legacy. People also glimpse their unique spirit, stubbornly enduring. Thus, Huzun holds cultural pride, defining their identity. For example, when young Pamuk visited the Bosphorus with his mom, they'd sit in a rowboat admiring the view. He noticed the hills' ever-changing colors came not from sunlight, but from roofs, walls, sycamores, redbuds, seagull wings, all glowing with inner light as if alive, sparking joy in fleeting moments. Then you'd see even poor kids leaping into the sea, playing freely, so Huzin lends dignity to resignation, showing why Istanbulites choose optimism and pride. Why do they calmly endure the city's history of failure, setbacks, and poverty? Because they see past glory, not decline, as their starting point, guarding ruined landscapes to protect the city's value. They're grateful for this decay, for it defines their meaning. As Pramuk wrote, life's no big deal after all. No matter what happens, I can always stroll along the Bosphorus. Along the shore, Pamuk also used black and white photos to deepen his writing on Istanbul. These photos don't just prove the text, they're the real vessels of Istanbul's Huzun essence. In these rough, early black and white photos, Pamuk's family through years, Istanbul's snowy streets, Huzun seems frozen in air, perfectly captured by sensitive photography. In one monochrome image, Pamuk describes the dusk cityscape like this. I love those autumn into winter evenings when bare trees tremble in the north wind. People in black coats and jackets hurry home through darkening streets. I watch old apartment walls and crumbling wooden ruins, relishing overwhelming melancholy as darkness falls. Such words instantly become black and white photos in readers' minds. Viewing the city means seeing through murky history. Whether appearances are vivid or faded no longer matters. Even grand Ottoman architecture in photos shows empire's end through muted tones. It was in this sorrow that Pamuk spent his teenage years. He'd shop with mom, visit landmarks like the Bosphorus shores with dad. Sometimes he'd stay at his aunt's place across town. There, he'd watch the strait for hours, boats gliding through water. During these wanderings, Pamuk revealed his gift, imagining another self in Istanbul. In Orhan's Double chapter, he recalls this. He felt another him existed, on some street, in some apartment, on countless winter nights. Walking Istanbul streets, he'd gaze through pale orange light at others' windows, thinking his double might live there. At first, imagining another self was just childhood fantasy. Like seeing grandma's old vases, frames, dishes hiding in dim living rooms, slowly slipping into fantasy worlds. You'd imagine grandma's room as a ship's bridge, sailing stormy straits, furniture swaying wildly, scattered like in movie theaters. He imagined himself sitting in an airplane, flying to a fairy tale world. He stood between two mirrors, seeing countless reflections of himself, and he made various movements just to observe the reactions of those countless selves. In elementary school, his imagination of self doubles expanded into a fascination with painting. During the painting process, his other self had more freedom to express itself. In the chapter, The Joy of Painting, Pamuk wrote that as he watched the pencil move across the paper, it felt like a force was controlling his hand, as if another person had taken over his body. He loved painting Istanbul's scenery. This city trained his vision and subtly shaped his spiritual journey. In middle school, Pamuk attended a prestigious international school. School life was too boring, and his interests clashed with those of the middle-class reserve army. He felt alienated from his peers because he always saw himself as a loser. He felt he couldn't succeed in this school, as if foreseeing a future of shabby, destitute, and mediocre life. So he started skipping school. During his truancy, he gradually fell in love with the melancholy backstreets. Backstreets are ancient streets hidden behind new buildings. All the aged things there deeply attracted Pamuk. The hills near the fortress, the docks around each harbor where ferries pass, the Bosphorus, windows in small towns with old women and cats sitting. Through constant wandering, Pamuk more deeply embraced the city's Huzun atmosphere, and he gradually realized the space where his other soul might reside. At this time, Pamuk had two identities, one as a middle-class individual and one as an artist without a future. Pamuk's identities corresponded to the city's two landscapes. One side was the urban reality undergoing secularization and westernization, and the other was the decaying and sinking urban history. After graduating from middle school, Pamuk enrolled in Istanbul Technical University to study architecture. During this time, he encountered the heaviest blow of his life up to that point. The girl he loved left him. This girl was also born into a middle-class family. She admired Pamuk's painting talent, often served as his model, and they often walked the streets together, searching for Istanbul's unique scenery. One day, the girl told Pamuk that her father wanted to send her to Switzerland for schooling to make her leave him, because her father believed that following an architect or painter wouldn't let his daughter live a wealthy, westernized life. After this romance ended, Pamuk lost interest in painting, and his life sank into melancholy and emptiness. He had to return to the back streets to escape the real world, school, the life doctrines preached by his parents, and the monotony he could imagine. Istanbul's melancholy comforted his emotions, and his two selves were resolved in the final chapter's dialogue with his mother. On one side was his mother's earnest advice, "I must finish school and find a stable job." On the other side was my weariness. In my mother's words, I felt as if my soul left my body, wandering through countless things on Istanbul's streets, and I decided never to argue with her again. A moment later, I told my mother, "I don't want to be a painter. I'm going to be a writer." When Pamuk said, "I want to be a writer," it was like a rare moment of enlightenment in life. His later life proved he'd found his best path, writing. In writing, his two selves finally merged, because Pamuk felt his key mission was to write about Istanbul's Huzun and pass on its eternal charm. Pamuk included his own biography in Istanbul's Cause. The city's spirit had become his soul's essence. His own growth was a process of constantly breathing the city's air and becoming part of it. Pamuk once said, "Istanbul's fate is my fate. I cling to the city only because it made me who I am." Of course, even as a writer, Pamuk didn't solve his duality for good. He just shifted the conflict to East-West culture clashes. Pamuk is a fairly westernized thinker, but he lives in Turkey at the East-West crossroads, so he often faces cultural conflicts. For instance, in Pamuk's novel Snow, the protagonist's quest for ideals and love unfolds amid East-West political and religious conflicts, and their cultural identity crisis mirrors Pamuk's own duality. It can be said that the issue of the double has no final answer. But it's precisely this irreconcilable contradiction that gives Pamuk's works inexhaustible vitality and tension. For a writer, facing and persistently exploring questions is far more important than providing answers. Pamuk occupies this constantly shifting, boundary-crossing position. like the Bosphorus Strait described in the book. Europe on one side, Asia on the other. Istanbul, both melancholic yet dreaming of the future in the sea's freedom. This is the spiritual quality revealed in Pamuk's works. It can be said that Istanbul and Pamuk's growth are inseparable. They find reflections of themselves in each other. All right, we've covered the book's portrayal of Istanbul and the city's spirit of Huzun. We also discussed Pamuk's self-doubling, how it evolved into his relationship with the city, and how he found his writing path within this complex bond. Pamuk spent his life searching for himself and the individual city relationship. This book is the splendid flower that bloomed from that long, arduous exploration. Pamuk said this book is his second life. It's also a unique biographical work, highly literary, blending vivid imagery with intellectual depth. But the prose is loose and free-flowing, perfect for depicting cityscapes and intricate personal memories. Descriptions of Istanbul's streets brim with melancholic poetry, evoking long memories of past lives and immersing us in reflections on life and history. Pamuk also included numerous photographs, a bold attempt to blend non-literary media into traditional literature. Text and images don't just complement each other. Between profound words and monochrome tones exists a relationship like developer and negative film, achieving perfect harmony in essence. Moreover, by overlaying personal growth onto the city's landscape, the book creates mutual interpretation, revelation, and fulfillment between individual and urban identity. It can be said that a city's spiritual character shapes the soul of its citizens. This inspires us to rediscover the cities around us and their unseen meanings. Nowadays, many leave hometowns for cities seeking self-fulfillment. We gain fresh experiences but also feel lost. Maybe we're urban wanderers like Pamuk, tirelessly observing fragmented cityscapes to find spiritual belonging and self-understanding. German thinker Benjamin famously said of his Berlin life, "Berlin taught me how to get lost." He meant spiritual and psychological disorientation. Getting lost is that soul state where you roam freely, yet find no place for yourself in the city. Of course, only through losing yourself can you gain deeper self-awareness. In other words, knowing you're lost lets you consciously strive to find yourself again. Urban melancholy is really just a symbol of our lost souls. In this sense, we don't live in cities. Cities live through us as we see, walk, and know streets, buildings, rivers, and strangers. Placing yourself in the city is like a drop in the ocean. Maybe someday you'll find your true life destination. All right, Istanbul, that concludes our interpretation of Memories of a City. Reading notes are below the audio. See you tomorrow.